So we've been through the novices. We'll move on to the full division, I suppose, in terms of the hurdlers. We'll start with the champion hurdle. Whether it happens or not, it is potentially fairly unlikely. But we are in the fairly unique scenario of having the best three horses in the races being mares potentially if they all run. Sure. The obvious one in terms of whether they run here or not would be Honeysuckle. Can you see her being a champion hurdle winner? Does she have the sort of right attributes for that race?
In terms of whether she has the right attributes, I'm still a little bit on the fence. I think going into the weekend, I wasn't sure she was going to be a champion hurdle horse at all. And given that she won the Irish champion hurdle, you can't say now that she's definitely not. I do wonder about the depth of that form, but again, how much stronger is this going to be than? Well, obviously it's going to be a lot stronger than the race at Epatante on Saturday. But how much stronger? How much more does she have in the locker? She's a horse that keeps winning. I was a bit worried about her jumping going into Saturday, and I don't think she was. I thought she was better than I thought she might be.
Yeah,
actually.
but she's not rapid, is she?
Yeah, she'd always looked a little bit sort of like she might end up being a chaser.
Yeah.
Which she still might. And it's rare. I say this less than 24 hours on from a former champion hurdler winning a Grade 1 over fences yesterday, but it's rare that a champion hurdle or a top 2 mile hurdler is as good over fences.
Yeah.
To me, she seems a little bit like a chaser in the making.
Certainly, if they're hanging around doing it, if you're in the second season, you don't have much racing.
Yeah,
and they have the right background.
But I think she's still. She has the rating that, given the £7 mares allowance, is such a big thing, and given that it is looking like a substandard year at present, you can't say that she still has lows and lows to find, because she doesn't really. But that still doesn't necessarily mean she is a rock solid bet in a champion hurdle. I'm still not convinced personally.
Well, if isolate what I deem the two main mares, Honeysuckle and Epatante. On the camp of Epatante, if you want to be a negative, you'd say, well, hasn't again had that condition that we spoke about in the novice ranks. Even the Christmas hurdle came fairly easily to it. But taken in isolation, the two performances, you've got to judge the whole career as well. But give me what Epatante did in that Christmas hurdle over what Honeysuckle did yesterday. I think Epatante just got a bit more quality about her. She's still more of an unknown quantity. I mean, I'm not saying it is, but if that's the limit of what Honeysuckle can really do as a hurdler, then
beating Paisley
beating the 150 odd rated Petit Mouchoir,
stepping out of novice company.
And maybe it isn't, but the time before, I think it's got loads of holes in it. Mullins ran several against him, every single one drifted. And what did she have to do there other than show up?
Didn't turn up properly, did she?
Well, Apples Jade has run one race in 14 months or so. So I would take Epatante over the other leading mare, Honeysuckle. I think Rory and I were saying off air, in another year Honeysuckle will be mares bound. I don't think there'd be any concern, but there's a groundswell, isn't there, of anything shows any promise around that trip that everybody is clamouring for the champion because they know it's a bad race. Hence why Envoy Allen was being talked up of that.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about depth of form. It's talking out of both sides of my mouth here, really, because I'm going to mention Pentland Hills, who I still think is a horse who has yet to show his best. He was really good in the Triumph. Wasn't a strong race, it rarely is. But to say he was a horse flat rated in the high 70s, I mean, he'd probably be 90 or 100 if he went and had another crack at it for Henderson. But he's just a quick horse who shaped like a significantly better horse than Ballyandy for 95% of the Haydock race in the Haydock glue with the elongated running, and he got run out of it. I think we obsess over winning and losing in this game for obvious reasons, because people bet money and get prize money, and it's influences almost everything. But for me, he was the moral winner of that race, and had that race had been Cheltenham in March on more seasonal ground, he'd have skinned Ballyandy, who, in an embarrassing indictment probably of the division, is somehow made himself a player, having graduated. I know he's a champion bump winner, but graduating from handicaps, plodding his way.
He ran in the West Yorkshire Hurdle over the season, didn't he, over 3 months?
Yeah, exactly. Plodding his way to push Call Me Lord, whose form lines were let down at the weekend. So it's a. I nearly swore there, but it's a mess.
I think that is part of the reason why I'm still holding out hope that one of those with potential in the division could yet emerge, and I'm thinking particularly of the two Mullins horses, Saudier and Classical Dream. Saudier has obviously had his issues. He's only run twice in the last 2 seasons, hasn't he? But in the first of them, he was still just in front of last year's subsequent champion hurdle winner when falling at the last in a race at Naas. And this year he's beaten Petit Mouchoir and Classical Dream in the Morgiana at Punchestown. No reason really, I don't think, to doubt that form. You could maybe argue that Classical Dream is a slightly stuffier horse. But things haven't gone right for him, and he hasn't been seen since. He wasn't seen at Christmas. He wasn't seen this weekend. I'm still hoping that if they can get him right and he turns up to Cheltenham, he could be a player. And likewise, Classical Dream. I watched back the Supreme last week from last year, and I can't get out of my mind how impressive he was. He was basically in control of that race from halfway.
Do you think with Classical Dream, just maybe going back to Pentland Hills as well, just similar in the sense of back into that sort of environment?
Yes,
similar sort of
I think that's a big thing. We haven't actually touched on that at all yet, have we? But Cheltenham form is so hard to knock with horses going back there. That's something that Honeysuckle has to prove. She missed the Mayor's Novice Hurdle last year. She's never even travelled out of Ireland. And you do see it year after year of horses that maybe through the depths of winter haven't been shown the same level of form. It gets to the spring, they go back to Cheltenham, and you see a different horse.
I'm definitely Classical Dream over Soldier because he's shown that level of brilliance in a race that I believe in more than.
And the Supreme had a slight boost last season with Felix Desjardins going on to win at Aintree and Fakir Dieux running well at Aintree, but it didn't look like it was a top class race. But recent weeks have shown that maybe it is better than we thought for a while, because Thomas Darby was second, who came out and won a handicap from a big weight recently, and Itchy Feet was third, who won the Scilly Isles Novice Chase Grade 1 at Sandown on Saturday.
This is a general downturn in the two-mile division.
Yeah, so I do think that if Classical Dream, now obviously he was due to run on Saturday and was pulled out the evening before being lame. I don't know how serious that is. I don't know the extent of that. I'm hoping it's just a small thing that meant he couldn't run over the weekend, but could be back in work this week. Yeah. Well, actually, he hasn't drifted markedly on Betfair. He's still sort of in around sort of between 10 and 20 to 1 range, which I take to mean that he's not out for any great length of time.
If you want to liken it to a horse from completely other end of the spectrum, and I think it's Mullins not really caring about some of this early season stuff. It's a bit like Elliott is trying so hard to wrest his title away from him, and see if Mullins just thinks last couple of weeks of season, you've had your fun, Gordon. I'll run some prop horses now. It's like what happens in this part. It's more Elliott's territory than Mullins is, because Mullins is keyed in on so many of these major festivals in the spring, and I don't doubt for a second that, as we shot, the horse we're going to mention was Chac and Boursois, who beaten first time out, people might have had their heads in their hands. How did that happen? He was supposed to be brilliant. He's got this verdict over Defy de Soy from Punchestown, but that was a means to an end, and he was right back on it. And without the setback, I suspect we'd have seen Classical Dream doing something similar had he gone for one of the targets over the weekend.
Yeah. No, obviously we have to mention the way that mistake that he made at Christmas time which was alarming. But I actually like the way that having made that mistake, taken off far too early from the, I think it was the fourth hurdle, he actually jumped the next few properly. And he'd done a similar thing at the first on his reappearance in the Morgiana. And I just wonder whether that was linked to fitness and just being out of
ring rusting.
Yeah. And I do like the way that, having made a real bad blunder at Christmas time, he then, obviously that basically finished off his chance. The effort of trying to recover from that ultimately completely told on him. But he did briefly get back into the race and jump the next few hurdles much better.
Yeah.
I wonder whether, obviously we have the latest setback sort of to take into account as well, but I wonder whether that error almost sort of switched him back on mentally for a little while. He realised that actually,
All right, but at this stage, no prices. I'm not going to say this should be this should be that price. Just purely, who should be fav for the champion at this point? I go, even though I'm Pentland Hills fan generally, I'll go for Hendo's Epatante because of.
I think
she's done fewer things wrong.
Yeah, I think you would have to say one of those mares, but that doesn't mean that they make huge amount of appeal to me at the price. Do you have any particular issue with the course for Epatante? I know she was a very short price favourite for the Mares' Novice Hurdle last year and was only 9th, I think.
I'd throw that race out really. I mean, even the SPs of the horse involved in the finish raised alarm bells.
Yeah, it was a bizarre race. The winner was sort of had no chance even of falling out. Didn't it?
It was a mad race, and she possibly just wasn't ready for the cut and thrust or something like that. But I just wonder.
I was kind of inclined to think the same way, but then I wonder whether the way that she won at Kempton at Christmas, she just sort of glided into the race. I do wonder whether there is perhaps something in that. And that getting into a rhythm at Newbury, where she won on her reappearance, and Kempton is much easier than at Cheltenham in a champion hurdle. There
might be how many runners?
Well, yeah, we don't know. Well, it could be one or the other, couldn't it? It could be, I don't know. It could be people decide. No, well, I don't know. Yeah, it could be a big field. Yeah, that's another thing to consider. And that's another thing that maybe Honeysuckle has to answer. It wasn't a small field on Saturday, but she was kind of able to be in the right place, and I don't think that the size of the field made any real difference to her. But that said, Cheltenham, different ball game. Horses wanting to lead, other horses in there. I'm completely on the fence at the moment. Basically, is the upshot of this, and I think we need to wait and see the vibes closer to the time. See if the Mullins horses make it there.
If there's say Pentland's 8+ or something like that, won't put anybody off backing that horse each way, because I think the way he travels and with that triumph form, I think in a really ropey year where you can count on one hand the horses that you think are guaranteed to run a race, I think he is pretty much guaranteed to run a race. I don't see 3 beating him.
Yep.
And if it turns out to be as weak as we think it is, and he makes the progress for getting away from awful ground again, then he might just be good enough to win anyway.
Yep, we've obviously mentioned Epatante and Honeysuckle there. The other mare that we should really touch on is Beni, Dieux, in terms of where she runs. Obviously the Mares' Hurdle seems like the most likely port call, but she's also in the stayers. Should meet Paisley Park.
There was really chat about her being supplemented for the champion over the weekend.
Yeah, there was talk. I did see a bit of that. Yeah,
she would be favourite if they decided that was the way to go, because not only would
Honeysuckle disappear.
Honeysuckle would probably disappear. It would also mean, I suspect, Saudier doesn't make it there in the same colours. So if they decide to go that route, and I don't know how serious they are about that at the moment, but it does seem to have been mentioned as an option.
I think him and Elliot cut from the same cloth with that. As soon as Envoy Allen was mentioned as being, go for the champion, Elliot was straight away curbing it.
Yeah.
And it's tended to be the same with Mullins, or how often he's taken the penalty kick of the mares race over a world hurdle.
Except we have the evidence of Annie
Power
Power
being the. But in the sense that Annie Power, it was a different stage of her career. It was
took a
almost
little
like
while to get there, didn't it?
Yeah,
she'd run in the stairs first,
and she'd run
and
in the
then fallen in
stairs.
the mares.
She'd run in the mares.
Yeah.
It was like, all right, final fling here. She's still got her ability, albeit that was a weak champion, and a few people I was fairly negative about her pre-race. I appreciated she'd win if she was on a game, but I wasn't sure there was enough evidence that she would be. Whereas Beni Dieux hasn't got the blemishes on her record so far, and
if she runs in the stairs, is she a proper challenger to Paisley Park? Obviously, a very different type of horse.
it should be definitely a proper challenger. I can sort of envisage though, perhaps she's not cut from the same cloth as Annie Power, and it's just easy to pigeonhole them, but I can almost envisage a more of that versus Annie Power situation where Beni Dieux cruises through the race and looks like she's got Paisley Park in trouble before he unleashes that surge that I often say. 99% of horses just don't have it in their arsenal, and he does.
Linking into that, I think he could be even better this year as well. Actually, Paisley Park. I think he looked in major trouble in the race last year, didn't he? And got himself out of it in phenomenal style.
Yeah. Basically, a pretty deep race that when you had Sam Spinner, who was considered to
favourite of the race.
He was going to be doing. He was the Paisley Parker 12 months earlier until he blobbed at Cheltenham and Aintree.
Fahim was third.
Yeah.
A load of other proper good horses, but it was that sense last year that he needed a proper race to drag him into it, and he got himself into a bit of trouble in his race. But the race the other day at Cheltenham, I was super impressed with. I know that the bare form of it is nowhere near of that of his staying hurdle win last year, because they went at steady pace, but I thought that should have left him vulnerable.
You were the two, basically.
You had a former supreme able to control the tempo, jumping very well up until the last couple, and that was the exact scenario that could have gotten Paisley Park beaten, and yet he still got there at the last. The jump at the last took him into complete control, and he still had time for his customary idling, and I was super impressed with the way he overcame that steady gallop.
What's the worry there for that we have a similar scenario? What's in the absence of a Sam Spinner, say, in the division now he's gone chasing, who's going to fulfil a role of the hare, and who's going to make up the numbers really to ensure it's a big field that naturally is likely to lead to a stronger pace?
It's a good question, isn't it?
Again, it's way too far out to speculate really, but I'm just throwing it out there that
I suspect that they've decided that front running is the way to get Somerville Boy jumping, and I think that they'll be happy if there's no one else to go forward with him again. And like you say, it's hard to know exactly who's going to turn up, but I suspect that there will be maybe Somerville Boy's stablemate, the World's End, is going to be prominent. I don't know. Maybe Apple's Jade could turn up, and I know that she was in no sort of form when running against Beni Dieux the other week.
But if they're not going to retire after that,
they haven't retired her straight away. They've just said they might go for the stayers.
I would think we're both clear in this, aren't we? That the only thing that stands in the way of Paisley Park winning again is Beni Dieux being supplemented, and maybe the race getting tactical.
I think she is entered. Isn't
She's in this one. She needs supplementing for the champion.
Sorry,
but I think.
Or taking her taking in a race that is probably odds against.
I think normally you'd make her long odds on to run in the mares.
Yeah. We
know that Willie, and I think to a slightly lesser extent, but still to a major extent, Rich Ritchie they're both of the mindset that winning any race at Cheltenham is. Why would you go and finish second or third when you can win a race at Cheltenham that is actually a Grade 1? I know it's restricted to mares, but it is a Grade 1.
They'll like a cricketer who wants to protect the batting average, aren't they? We saw it perhaps most famously with Vautour doing the last minute switch to running in the Ryanair in the Gold Cup.
But having said that, I wonder whether they are becoming slightly more on the front foot, open to taking on the
peace and love.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
I bet Richie might live those days.
Who do you think? Do you think what? I know it's impossible to say given their position, but what sort of? How do you see their chances should Beni Dieux run in the stayers? What do you think? Paisley Park would be very short against her.
No, I don't. I think it'd be. I don't know what price he is currently, but hang on, we can double check.
I think
that.
he's about even money. Isn't
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
I'd envisage.
Yeah, shade of odds on thereabouts. Yeah.
I think by getting there, he'd shorten naturally, and he'd probably be 4 to 6, something like that, to beat Beni Dieux, who'd be not far off the other side of that.
Yeah,
with a lot of horses making up the numbers in behind.
Almost a case of raw ability, pretty close, but almost the circumstances will separate them.
Seemingly, we have said this about Altio, like that engine to get yourself out of trouble, just do no more than required, and to sustain a run as Paisley Park has shown. I mean, it's possibly, maybe he's gone on the sour side now, Altio. Again, he's a horse we'll come on to later. So you don't know how long it's lasting. There's never a guarantee that, there was plenty there, but everything about him suggests that he does only what's required, and he'd do the same again if the mare. I mean, if they cross the last, unless they've gone a crawl, and it's a case of who can cover these 150 yards faster than the other, should probably beat him. But
yeah, I think it's interesting what you mentioned. I think I'm in agreement as to that is the sort of price that Paisley Park should be. But if you think back to those days when Big Bucks won all of his stayers hurdles, or world hurdles as they were, he'd beaten everything very much in the same manner, probably to an even more dominant extent.
Yeah.
And he ended up going off even money or close to every year at Cheltenham, just because it seemed like there was a new challenger who hadn't quite beaten, and the bookmakers were happy to lay. So I think that you could get the scenario, regardless of whether Beni Dieux runs, that Paisley Park on the day can be backed at even money, perhaps even a shade of odds against, and I think it's going to be hard to.
The race is almost becomes a match bet, doesn't it? If you're undecided as to who might beat the other, or if you've got a view that one will beat the other, don't be getting involved in any match bets. It's a case of one of these will win it, almost.
Yeah.
If you ran the race 100 times, 90 of them will be won by one or the other, maybe.
And I don't think there's any point in getting involved in the market now.
No.
Like what I just said, I think on the day.
Yeah, so even if she doesn't run,
on the day,
the 4 to 6 isn't going to be 4 to 7 probably.
I still think on the day, even if she doesn't run, he's going to be able to. You'd be able to back him up very close to even money, if not even money, and I think that's probably the.
When you back if second, third, or fourth in free bet, and all the other variations that you use.